Welcome back to another episode of What Are You Made Of with your boy, the unstoppable Mike C-Roc. I'm in the house today with a friend of mine. I was on his podcast recently and I couldn't help but bring him on to mine because he's such a nice guy and he's also well accomplished, which you'll hear about here very shortly. I'm really looking forward to digging into what ingredients have gone into making Mike Malatesta. But that's my guest, Mike Malatesta. He's an entrepreneur who has helped start, grow, and sell two amazingly successful waste management companies. One sold for mid 8 figures and the other sold for low 9 figures. He also created and hosted the How Did It Happen podcast, which is what I was on in the past here. And he explores stories, lessons, and wins with some of the most fascinating, successful people in the world. And, I was one of those some, I guess. Fascinating, successful. Man, I fit right in that.
Definitely, man. You're right in my wheelhouse.
And he's got a new book called Ownership: How Getting Selfish Got Him Unstuck, or got me unstuck, but he's talking about him. Yeah. It's a philosophical memoir that reveals the secrets to why so many entrepreneurs get stuck and how they can shift to get free once again. Mike, it's great to see you, buddy. Welcome to the show.
C-Roc, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man. Thanks for being here. I love to start with gratitude, man. Gratitude's the best. So, let's get into it, man. We start the show, every show, with the same question. So sticking with tradition, Mike, what are you made of?
I am made of choices. I'm made of choices. And it wasn't always that way, Mike. For a long time, maybe most of my entrepreneurial career, I was made of decisions. And I got really good at making decisions because I thought that's where my value was. The quicker I could make a decision, the more accomplished I was, and the more valuable I was to the people on the team, and the bigger hero, that I was as well. But there's a period of time in my book that I talk about that I call the Valley of Uncertainty, and it's a place where I dropped off about 10 or 11 years into my entrepreneurial career, and to get out of that valley, it took a lot of time and a lot of help and a lot of introspection. But one of the things that I really came away with on my journey out of there was that I need my life to be about making choices and not making decisions. And the difference there is, decisions are quick and they're sort of instinctual, and they're transactional, and choices are introspective, they're deliberative, they're future focused, and they're more intentional. And so I made that shift, and that's something I recommend for everybody to consider, but it's been a great thing for me. So choices is what I'm made of.
Wow, man. If you're taking notes, you might want to write that down, man. Decisions are more transactional. Choices are more intentional. Now, is that your definitions of them, or is that the definitions of them? I'm curious, and I look up definitions a lot.
Yeah.
And while we're doing this, I'm going to look these up. But
look them up.
But I'd love to dig.
That is not a Merriam-Webster definition. That is my definition of my distinction between the two things, and they're not the same word. I can tell you that as a student of words, but that is not the definition out of the dictionary.
Yeah. So, and again, I'm a stickler for definitions, and I also love interpretations of words because I do the same thing. So, but a choice is an act of selecting or making a decision. So it's got the word decision in the definition, but when faced with two or more possibilities, and we'll look up decision. And by the way, this is something I've learned recently. I took a study course. I was out in LA and took a study course on how to study. And one of the 3 things and 3 reasons that people, I'm not teaching you, Mike, I'm preaching to you right now. I'm preaching to the audience, but 3 reasons that people don't learn or cannot properly consume when they're reading something or talking to someone. And one of the main ones is they pass a word they don't understand. And so it always intrigued me. So I look up words all the time. And when I'm reading, what I did, I learned this technique. Actually, every page I read, I scan the page real quick to see if there's a word I don't understand. And if I don't understand the word, I don't read the page. I stop, I look up the word first, then I go back and read the page, and it's allowed me to read 5 times faster.
Oh, no
And I don't
kidding.
ever run into the situation where I'm reading a paragraph and then I just black out and like, what did I just read? That eliminates it. And it's
Yeah.
because we pass words we don't understand. This has nothing to do with choices and decisions, by the way. This is just something that
It's
I'm off
yeah.
on a tangent, man. Bring me
It's a good
back.
aside. Yeah, it's a good aside though, because I do the same thing. If I can't get the interpretation of the word or a good definition from the context of the words around it, I look it up because otherwise I pass it over and I make an assumption about what it meant, or I have no
Yep.
idea, which doesn't help me. Neither one of those helps me if I'm not correct.
Well, and by the way, like there's actually a physiological thing that happens to you when you do that. And
When you skip it or when you look it
when
up?
you skip over a word
Okay.
or when you pass a word you don't understand,
Yeah.
and you actually will block out what you're reading ever as far past that word. What I did was I went through this whole lecture and I'm reading the transcript of a lecture.
Yeah.
And then when I went back and the supervisor that watches and helps you with the study went back and they help you scan the page after you've already been through it. I got all the way to the last page. It was about 20 pages and an hour-long lecture. And I found a word when I scanned after I had already done it that I didn't understand. I was honest. I said, hey, I missed one.
Yeah.
And I didn't know this. They made me go back to complete this whole course. They made me go back and do the same lecture again from the beginning.
Oh, no kidding.
Because when you miss a word, your mind does not record it. It's crazy. Then from that point on, I didn't miss a word. And I absorbed everything. It was like a night and day difference. So it was pretty cool. It's a little off topic.
Huh.
Decision, a conclusion or resolution reached after consideration.
Mm-hmm.
A conclusion or resolution reached after consideration. So the choice has to do with two or more options. And a decision is a conclusion or resolution reached after consideration. Yeah. So I get it, man. So tell me, give me an example of something in your past of where you made a decision and how that same scenario could have been a choice instead.
Yeah. Well, I so the biggest thing I could tell you is that when I started my business from scratch, my first business like true startup. And I went into it with a mentality that I had a lot to learn, right? So not only did I have a lot to learn, but I had a lot of things that I had to decide on. And sometimes I had to decide on things before I was able to learn them, right? Have you ever been in that situation?
Of course.
People expect it and you decide.
Of course.
So then I got used to that. And then, as I mentioned earlier, when I was sort of breaking my interpretations of those words up, I just was like a decision machine, right? My whole value was on how quickly I could respond to something with an answer that either was, in my mind at least, or appeared to be correct, right? Or so that people could come away with what they wanted. And I kind of just thought that speed and all of that was very, very important. But here's what I wasn't doing during that time. I wasn't thinking about, the biggest thing was I wasn't thinking about what I actually wanted and where I actually wanted to go. So I got into this business and I'm doing all this thing. I think it was the right thing at the time, but then, 10 years or so into it, I was still behaving the same way and doing the same things and thinking to myself that I was being like super valuable as a result of this. So I had tricked myself really, because what I'm supposed to be doing as a leader is leading the organization to a point, to a purpose, or to a point, or to a future, or to a property that we could own and make our own, pay for it, own, and it would be breaking through wherever we are now and getting to a future place. But instead of doing that work, instead I was just wrapped up in, the value I got from making decisions. So I just wasn't, I was not future focused. I was present focused. And of course you have to be present focused in life, but in order for you to be really purposeful, or for me at least, I had to change the way I was doing it, let other people make decisions so that I could free up time to make choices that I could then bring back.
Yeah, I love that, man, because that's something as you scale a company, you need to be kind of shielded to those everyday problems.
Yes.
And you should be focused on your vision and being a visionary and executing that.
Yes.
And to keep all you don't want to hear any negative stuff like that unless it's an absolute emergency, something you need to be like, keep it away from me. I want to focus because it happens to me. I experience this and I get caught up in what we call present day problems.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've seen, and I'd love to hear your take on this. And then after this, I want to get into where you grew up and all that too, because I want to hear about growing up. But um, you're focused on this vision in the future. Now, everybody should be focused on this future vision. And as long as you're focused on that, the everyday problems, they shouldn't take your focus. You should knock things out or get somebody to handle them, keeping your focus out here. But when you have your focus out here and you fail for some reason, or you have a setback, you bring your attention back to the present day problems again. And now you're talking about, you're dealing with these present day problems. And if you don't really quickly refocus back onto the future, when somebody gets your attention or distracts you, you get caught in this. And then when you have a failure in here, then your attention directly goes to the past. Yeah. And that's what leads to destruction of businesses and lives and relationships. We have to, as leaders and, entrepreneurs and executives and founders, CEOs, we have to keep that future focus and get back to that as quickly as possible. And that's why it's so important. What I do is constantly I'm writing my goals down. Mm-hmm. Like I'm writing them down all the time to keep reminding me and keep my focus straight. So is that what you're kind of talking about there?
Yeah, you said a lot of things there, and I'm gonna dig in a little bit on a couple of them if you don't mind. So
yeah, man.
The one thing is what you should be doing as a CEO, entrepreneur, whatever, looking to the future is way easier to say than it is to do, because your business is like a gravitational force and it's drawing you back. Yeah. It does not want you to do that. It wants you to come back. And look, the reality, I think, too, is easier to say than do, much harder to do than to stay in the gravitational force, because in the gravitational force, in the present, you are very comfortable, right? You're comfortable doing what needs to be done. You're sort of orchestrating and reacting at the same time. When you step up, when you say, well, I'm going to step aside, I'm going to work on my business instead of in my business, or I'm going to work on the future, I'm going to make deliberate choices. That's hard work. And you separate yourself and you think, well, what if I can't do it? Or, you're sort of sitting there like, oh, I'm bored because I'm actually not really going to put the work in to do it.
Yeah.
And that's what you were just talking about. Where it kind of sucks you back in. It is easy to get sucked back in. It's like Ross Perot had that saying if anybody remembers Ross Perot, when he was running for president, all the jobs were moving to Mexico at the time. And excuse me, he said, there's this giant sucking sound and that's all of our jobs going to Mexico. Well, that sucking sound is your business sort of, vacuuming you back in if you let it, and it's easy to let it. So I know there's so many people out there saying, we've all heard it a million times, work, on your business, not in your business. And it's easy to get on a stage and say that. It's very, very difficult to separate yourself like what I'm talking about and actually start working on a future that you want to own.
Yeah, because anybody that has any work ethic, like we all grew up, like most successful people have a work ethic, but we also have a bad, I would say, belief that we have to be busy, and only when you're busy, you're important.
That's right.
Because people come home from work, oh, I'm so busy today, and makes them feel important, whether they got anything done or not, and whether they were doing their role as a CEO or a founder, an entrepreneur or not, visionary, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
But they're busy, and that makes them important. And that's what you're talking about, that pull, because I feel it sometimes too. And at the end of the day, I'm like, okay, what did I get done today?
Right.
But I shouldn't be asking that question, because what gets done doesn't mean that that's going to produce something. That's right. What did I produce today? That's a different story.
Yeah. Did I do my job? My job is my job getting a lot of stuff done, getting caught up in everything, being the hero, or is my job something else?
Yeah.
Bigger.
Yeah. Damn, that's a good topic, man. And I know this stuff, but it's always good to kindle it a little bit,
Yeah.
because I'm actually recently getting caught up in that stuff, and I'm in two startups right now. So
Okay.
not just one. I can't do just one, man. I got to be
Why?
like, we got two tech companies, and one's a little further along than the other. So we're doing different things in each one. But yeah, I'm in that phase right now, and we're developing the team. And sometimes I do have to do some of those lower leverage tasks,
Everybody does.
but
Everybody
yeah,
does sometimes.
yeah,
Everybody does.
yeah. So tell me about growing up, Mike. Where did you grow up, and what was like life as a kid?
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure. I grew up in Havertown, Pennsylvania, which is a small suburb of Philadelphia. Had a really good childhood. Stable family. My parents always provided, everything that we needed. I'd say we were modest, but I went to Catholic grade school, had a good friend network, and um, I had all the nurturing you need in life to make yourself whatever you want to be, Mike. Now, I didn't come from a neighborhood where many people went to, the generation, my parents' generation. There weren't that many college graduates including my parents, in our neighborhood, and most of the people sort of, grew up to be, a trade to do a trade, and and that's probably where I would have ended up too. But I got very lucky in high school, and this will resonate with you, but you ended up on a higher level. But in grade school, I was a pretty decent football player, and I got recruited to go to a private high school, like a prep school, and to play. And when I got there, I saw a whole new world. Like, these kids and these families came from a place that was definitely on the other side of whatever tracks I grew up on. And it was very intimidating for me at first, not only from the stuff you have, but also I thought I'd been educated well at my grade school. But when I got there at high school, I had to go back into the 8th grade for math and for and I think language, because I never had a language. And all the kids that went to the school before, they were doing Latin and another language. And
Mm-hmm.
their math was way up. So I was intimidated and embarrassed at first, but really being involved in sports there was the thing that just changed me. Because even though I came into the school and I didn't think I belonged for the reasons I just said, I belonged when I was playing, and I was the same as everybody else when we were playing. It didn't
Mm-hmm.
matter what your parents did for a living or
Yep.
where you lived. We were playing the game. You were just like me, and I managed to have a fortunate career there. And by the time I got out of that school, Mike, this is the point of this, I knew that I could compete with anybody. So the confidence that I was able to build over the 4 years there was just amazing. And I looked at the world, completely differently than I had been looking at the world when I was just growing up on our little street at the St. Denis Parish.
Wow, man. How big were you?
I was about the same size I am now. That's the unfortunate part.
Yeah.
You kept getting bigger. So I was like 5'8", 180 pounds.
Well, shoot, I was 5'7", 185 in college my freshman year, so I
Oh,
wasn't that
okay.
big. No, I
Okay.
mean,
But
I'm like 211ish now,
okay.
because I've really bulked up, built like weightlifting. But yeah, I was an outside linebacker. I was a little guy, but just aggressive. What
Yeah.
position did you play?
Well, I went in as a running back, and I was a running back for the first couple of years, and then they recruited some new kids who were a little bit better at running
Yeah,
back than I was.
yeah.
So then I ended up, I played both ways. I played guard and I played linebacker.
Okay, yeah. So linebacker is great, man.
Yeah,
That's one of my
I
favorite
love that.
positions.
I love
Yeah,
that.
I love that, man. So
Just hunt the ball down and just go after it. I just love
yeah,
that.
yeah. And let the big guys take the blocks in front of you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Clear path.
So tell me about entrepreneurship. Like when you got into your first company, startup,
Yeah.
not knowing a whole lot, right? I mean, you didn't really know what you're doing, did you?
No.
But did you have something in mind, like a clear vision of what you wanted and kind of just, take us
No,
through that.
I didn't. W- when I got out of college, I got a job with a waste management company as a management trainee, and like I moved around and I was moving up, and I was like 5 years. I was basically saying yes to every opportunity, and they moved me around to 5 different places in 5 years, or 4 in 5 years. I can't remember. And I started thinking, wow, this is really good here. Maybe someday I was the youngest divisional vice president in the company history at the time. And I thought, I got the world just right where I know someday, maybe I'll be the CEO of this company. But instead of that happening, my boss called me one afternoon I was actually St. Patrick's Day, 1992. And he said he wanted to come up and see me from Chicago. And he came up to Milwaukee from Chicago, and he said, and that afternoon, and he fired me. So instead of this dream I had, or this notion, or this, whatever you call it, delusion that I would be, run this company one day, I was fired.
Did they tell you why?
Yeah, that's a long story, Mike. And
Okay.
I can get into it if you want, but
No, I mean, that's fine. The
short story is I'd been living in Milwaukee for a little over a year. Knew nobody, I didn't have a vision for the future, because I thought this was what was my future was going to be. I was just so 6 months later, I did end up starting this business, but it was really just me and another guy thinking, we may not be very smart, but we can drive a truck, and we can work hard, and we'll, figure it out. So we didn't go into it with, we went into it to make a living.
Right.
That's the bottom line. So core values, no. 3-year plan. Yeah, we wrote one for the bank because you had to have one to get a loan. And fortunately, they bid on it and gave us the loan. But future was not something we were really looking at the time. That took me years before I started. And you hear a lot now, of people saying, you got to have a purpose and do what you love, and do what you're passionate about, and have a why and all that. And I think all that's really, really important, but it's not necessary to get started. If you really want to get started, you can get started without any of that stuff. And sometimes I think, I don't know what you think about this, Mike, but sometimes if you wait for all of those, ducks to get in a row, like, am I passionate about this? I don't know. Do I really have a purpose? I'm not sure. Do I really know what I want right now? Nah, then you might not take any action, and you might be asking yourself that question the whole time. But once you do get it started and you have a business and it's doing okay, you have an obligation to become the real leader. And that's when, this decisions versus choices and some of the other things I like to talk about start to really make a difference and really become important.
And so that first company you started, is that one you exited?
Yeah, I did. Started in 92 and exited that in 2015.
Okay, 92 to 15. And then what was the best year, like annual revenue for that company? You remember?
45 million.
45 million. And how many trucks was that? Do you remember roughly?
Geez. We had 150 team members, and we had, trucks, trailers, everything else. We had, way over 100 pieces.
And so that's like the trash guys that come pick up trash in developments too. Covered all different.
That. So what we were doing was we were hauling water, mostly water and sludge. So we would go into factories instead of neighborhoods.
Okay.
And we would take out all the byproducts from the manufacturing processes. So it was you name it. If it was nasty and smelly and whatever, that's where we were.
Gotcha. And then so that one exited. And
Yeah.
what were multiples like then? Do they give you multiples based off of like an amount based off the total revenue of the company? How does it work when you exit
No,
the current
no,
company?
not, it's not, I wish it's not a software business. That would be
Yeah.
good. I know that's always the dream of every software business. No, we were paid a multiple of EBITDA. And at the time on that business, it was a little over 8 times.
Okay. Yeah.
Um,
So 8 times is a pretty good multiple though, isn't it?
yeah, it was a good multiple.
Yeah.
I mean, they're a little bit higher now, but that was a that was a great multiple at the time. At the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Um, and then 3 years after that, I was able to start another business, and this time I did it with a private equity partner. So I did a totally different approach, and we were able to build that business up much more quickly because they had a good sized fund, and I was able to put the opportunities together, and then build a management team, and we got really lucky on that one. 3 years into it, a company came along and liked what we were doing, and we ended up selling it for just a phenomenal, like 12
That
times.
you said
So,
3 years into it?
3 years. Yeah.
Yeah. Damn. That's good. And and how many times? 12 times?
Well, 12
12x?
times. Yeah.
Damn, that is good. That's getting into tech. Tech's like 15 to 20x multiples based
Yeah.
on revenue, I think. Most of the time it's
Yeah.
revenue
Yeah.
or
A lot
yeah.
of times it's revenue. Yeah. So it's a whole different ballgame if you get there, right? It's
Yeah.
but yeah, it's yeah, that was it.
And when you started these companies, because this is a problem for most companies, when they start a company to get business in the first place, what did you guys do as far as promotion and marketing? Like, how
Well,
did you get business in the door?
yeah, well, this was the early to mid '90s, so there was no digital marketing. There was hardly an internet at that point. We didn't even have email until a few years in.
Yeah.
So it was
Yeah.
it was the old school me knocking, calling, knocking on doors, visiting, presenting, asking for an opportunity, promising to do a great job, and hoping that a few people would say okay, because you're totally unproven, right? It's like I don't,
Well, yeah. And they probably already have a company doing the job for them, right?
right? Yeah, of
So
course.
do you remember what your pitch was?
Yeah,
Like,
well, the well, I'll give you two examples. Um, one was a local scrapyard, and they had all kinds of machines that would crush cars and crush engine blocks and all, and they had all this oily water. And then whenever it rained, all the rain went into this big pond that they had. And that pitch was simple, like, hey, I'm a local guy. Um, I know you're dealing with a big company and they're probably doing, a good job for you, but here's what I'm going to promise you. You will be our very first customer. So whatever you want, you will get. Whenever you want it, you will get it. And they gave me a chance. And then with another one that we were able to get first, I knew that I knew about what their pricing was, but I also knew that I had uh, a disposal site, Mike, that would be able to process what they had for way less than what the company who was doing it for could get it processed for. So I didn't have to cut the price there. I charged the same, but I was making, because of this, other relationship that
Mhm.
we had, we were able to make more money than without we were able to make more money, and we might have been at or just a little bit below the price. I can't remember,
Yeah.
but for us it was a great deal, and for the client it was a great deal. And
Yeah.
fortunately on that one, they had so much that they already had multiple people in there, so we were able to come in and just take a portion a little bit from everybody. As was for us, it was amazing. Maybe the competitors didn't even notice that they weren't getting it all anymore, but for us it was amazing.
It's awesome, man. So as we wind down here, what's something that's got you excited right now that you're working on, and what's the vision for the future?
Well, a couple things. So I've got my podcast, as you mentioned, the How Did It Happen podcast, which I love doing. My goal with that podcast is to inspire activate and maximize the greatness in everybody that's listening. And I try to bring on people like you, C-Roc, and others that people look at now and they go, wow, wouldn't it be great to be him, or her? And the answer is, yeah, sure, it would be great. But you know what? You're not that different from him or her. Let's dig into the story and find out how you're the same, and what you did or what happened to you or how you made it happen. And let's learn something from that. So I really enjoy doing that. I've got my book, of course, Ownership, which is a couple of months out now. And it's doing really well. Got a lot of great reviews on Amazon. People seem to be enjoying it, and I'm getting a lot out of the interaction with people. I'm sure you've had that with your book too, where people, it's like, oh, that's so cool when someone says something nice to you about your book.
Yeah.
Because it's such a lonely process to get it.
Oh my God.
To get it there, right?
Yeah.
And then I have a coaching business for high-level entrepreneurs that I call Ownership Coaching. I coach entrepreneurs that are between 10 million and 250 million in revenue, who want to, break through and are having some challenges doing that. And I guess the biggest thing, I'm an investor in over 100 privately owned companies, Mike, and I have this goal that I want to, help 1,000 entrepreneurs create businesses that are each worth over $20 million or at least $20 million. And then I want to help all of those 1,000 help 10 others do the same thing for each of them.
Love it. So exponential.
It's like $200 billion in value if I come anywhere. If I come anywhere close to that, I'd be thrilled. And I don't think there's anything that I could be doing myself in my professional life that would have a bigger impact on entrepreneurs, on employees, and on really the world. Because all that value creation, it doesn't just go into the entrepreneur's pocket, it goes into everybody's.
Yeah, it does. That's phenomenal, man. And then one last question, and I'll let you go. I'm 6 minutes over. The last question would be, what was it? I just lost it. Hold on. Oh, what's the most common thing or challenge that when you're in your coaching? What is the most common challenge you hear from your entrepreneurs?
I think the biggest challenge that there is really self-awareness about where you are in your journey. There's a lot of fooling going on, right? You can look one way on the outside and feel totally different on the inside. And I just think that people have to get the people that I can help the best are people who are aware that there's a future out there that they want and they don't know how to get it. So if you're a person who doesn't have that awareness yet, you're probably not ready for somebody like me. But man, Mike, there's so many. I think all entrepreneurs are just so special, but there's so many, like I was for so long, who just don't want to give in to the fact or admit or acknowledge that you're stuck. You don't know what to do, because there are so many people out there that can help you. So many people. It's not like you have to do it on your own. You said results earlier, right? So do you want to win? Do you want to win, or do you want to win because you won all by yourself?
Right.
What do you want to do?
Yeah. There's nobody did anything great or just by themselves, manually by themselves. It doesn't happen, Right. So yeah, I love that, man. Well, look, I want to thank you for coming on the show. You're great, man. I enjoy talking to you, and let's stay in touch and maybe even do some things together in the future, Mike.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me. This has been a blast.
I appreciate you, man. You guys have been listening to the What Are You Made Of podcast with the two Mikes, Mike C-Roc, your boy, and Mike Malatesta joining us today. Thanks for listening. Keep coming back. I appreciate all of you. I appreciate the support that you give me, the companies that we're working on, and the What Are You Made Of movement. Keep coming back. Until next time, be unstoppable.